something passed through my town. I live in a town called Argusville in North Dakota, near Fargo. We get just about all the weather you can imagine out here. Hot summers, cold winters. We're usually prepared for it, too. It's a small town. Most everyone has been here since they were born. That's why we were all surprised when the emergency alert system went off. Some of us got it through our phones, and older folks got it through their dingy old TV sets. Just a message taking up the whole screen reading, "Wind crisis. Threat, fatal. Avoid venturing outside under any circumstances. You will be notified when the situation is stabilized." Since I've lived in Argusville, we've never had an alert like that. A couple of tornadoes, winter storms, and thunderstorms, but never just plain old wind. And it was sunny out. Most of us were walking around when we got it. Folks assumed it was some kind of test. Then the wind came. Some people went inside when it started blowing, but most of us hung out. It couldn't be a tornado. It was broad daylight with no clouds, so we didn't think it could be anything that dangerous. The winds never picked up to anything worrisome either. It was just a bit windy. People on the street gave each other wry looks, thinking how silly city folks must be to send out a warning over a little breeze. Then the voices came. The voices started out as the whistling and howling of the wind, but quickly morphed and began whispering. I think what each of us heard was different. What I've gathered from the few people who will talk about it with me is that it was secrets. The voices on the wind whispered secrets to us. Our secrets. Our darkest ones. Things we didn't want anyone to know. You hit your dog with the family car, threw him into the woods, cleaned his bloody, matted fur off the grill, and didn't tell anyone. They all still think he ran away. But I know. And I'll tell them, unless you kill another one before the wind passes. I'm ashamed to say that was my secret. I won't divulge that of the few who shared theirs with me, but some were worse and some were far less serious. It really depended on if you had anything you wanted to hide. Some people must have. Each of us got different ultimatums, different tasks we were to do in order to protect our secrets. I know this from the stories I heard, but even more so, I know it from what I saw that day. Horrors. People gouging their eyes out, cutting off their own tongues, crashing their cars through grocery stores. Someone even set fire to the animal shelter. The entire town was in chaos, living hell. From what I've put together, it seems that the task people were given was in some vague ratio to the severity of their secret. The folks with really minor secrets were told to do things like kill a bird or shit in someone's yard. And the people with big secrets, well, you could see the fallout of that all over town. After the wind crisis was over, military vans and some black SUVs were scattered all over town. They didn't really do much. They poked around, asked some questions, a few weird ones, in fact. Basic stuff like, what happened? What did you see? Then, how did you feel? Did you feel scared? Anxious? Guilty? How do you feel about the people in town? Safe? Suspicious? It was almost like they wanted to gauge how much damage the wind crisis was capable of, as if the whole thing really was some big test. Things have been pretty normal since then. People stay in when it's windy, though. Be careful when you're doing laundry. When I first moved to Pennsylvania, I didn't have a washer or dryer. I scored a cheap place not far from where I work in Pittsburgh, but in exchange, I had to sacrifice some amenities. I ended up taking my clothes to a laundromat down the street called Happy Suds. Dingy old place, and tiny. 4 washers and 4 dryers. Nothing really happy about it. But it was under $1 per load, so I was okay with swallowing my pride. When I walked in, the manager didn't even look at me. He just barked, "Dryer in the corner is off limits." Not broken, not out of order. Off limits. After what happened, I don't think he chose those words carelessly. Anyway, it looked off limits. It had a bunch of dents in it. It was covered in tape and graffiti. The graffiti had lots of odd symbols. Stuff I assumed some kids were using to piss off the local Christians and conservatives. Pentagrams and goat heads and some symbols I'd never seen before, but not so intricate that a teenager couldn't Google them and stencil them onto the dryer. I'd seen more sinister-looking stuff in the bathroom stall of the Pittsburgh Zoo. I ended up doing my laundry there once a week, sometimes every other week if I was particularly busy. One day, the owner wasn't there, but the place was open. "Hello?" Nobody answered. I figured the guy might be in the bathroom or something, so I went ahead with my laundry. Once everything was washed, I went over to the dryers. I tried them one at a time with no luck. They were plugged in, but completely unresponsive. The only one I hadn't tried was that demon dryer. I figured if it was broken, it couldn't hurt to just give it a go. Plus, I had a basket of damp clothes quickly turning dank. I tossed my clothes in and sank a few quarters. The dryer immediately started hitching and heaving. The thing bounced around, cracking and clanking. Geez, that guy wasn't joking, I thought. Then, with a loud bang, a huge convex dent erupted from the top of the dryer. I jumped back, worried the thing might explode. Instead, the lid went flying off the dryer, and something from another world climbed out. It was difficult to look at it. It kept phasing in and out of reality, almost like one of those magic eye books where you have to cross your eyes a little to see the picture. From what I could see, it was some kind of animal. It moved like a snake, slithering through space, but its body kept changing. It had hooves, then tentacles, then long, spindly arms like a spider. But its eyes stayed the same, deep, piercing red. And while the rest of it danced erratically in and out of existence, those eyes stayed fixed on me. I felt hot, like I was burning from the inside out. The thing got on all fours and galloped towards me, still shimmering from one dimension to the next. I sprinted away, feeling like I was running through water, like you do in a dream when you're being chased. I blasted through the door and didn't stop running until I was home. I looked behind me and saw nothing. The rest of the night was shaky breathing and white knuckles clutching my bed sheets, but eventually sleep came. The next day I felt much better. I thought I must have dozed off at the laundromat and scared myself into a bad dream. I walked down to Happy Suds, but stopped when I saw police lights and caution tape. I walked up to an officer and asked what happened. Guy got mauled, ripped to shreds, you wouldn't believe it. Black bear maybe? We're not too sure. We called the zoo, but everyone's accounted for. You should keep walking, though. We're taking the guy out in pieces, not pretty. I asked my landlord if I could have a washer-dryer installed. I told her I'd pay for the whole thing. I don't think I'm going to the laundromat ever again. You're out in the backyard picking worms for a fishing trip. You and your grandma go out in the water every month or so to have some quality time. Usually, you go out picking together as part of your ritual. Today's different. Grandma said, "Can't go picking today. Full moon. Moonworms are no good. They'll eat you alive." She's been getting up in years and will occasionally say some ominous stuff like that, things that don't really make any sense. You can see a dementia or Alzheimer's diagnosis in her future, but that's something to mourn later. Right now, your grandma is here and mostly lucid. You like picking worms and are fine with doing it by yourself. Plus, it's a great night for it. The brilliant moon makes the damp earth glisten where fat worms might be hiding. You wander lazily through the woods, plucking bait from the ground as you go. You admire how the ground twinkles under the beam of the full moon. It wiggles in your vision. Writhes. You look closer and realize exactly what it is you're looking at. It's not moist dirt reflecting the light of the moon. It's eyes. Hundreds, maybe thousands of eyes, each one waving on the end of a worm protruding from the ground. You panic as your awareness fills with the swarm of worms you've unknowingly waded into. You feel a sharp pain in your palm. You instinctively try to drop the handful of worms you've been toting around, but it's no use. They've each burrowed deep into your flesh, drawing jets of bright red that splash onto the earth below. And that's all it takes to alert the rest of the moonworms that there's fresh meat on their hook. You're browsing at a yard sale when you come across an old camera. You've been getting into photography and really like the grainy texture of old film. You look through the lens and snap a few photos of the scenery. As you survey the block, a hand drops in front of the viewfinder. Please don't point that thing at me. It's the seller. She looks nervous and has angled her body out of the camera's line of sight. How much is it? She haggles with you half-heartedly, and you end up taking the thing home for $7. A steal. When you bring it home, you find the camera has already been loaded with film. You snap some pics around the house. A coffee cup, a door, a hallway. You turn the camera around to look at the lens. It must be dirty or broken or something, because every time you look through it, you see this purple shadow. You can't find an imperfection, so you look through again. The purple thing moves when you try to follow it. It bounces in and out of your line of sight. You snap a few more pics, finish off the rest of the film, and head to your makeshift darkroom to figure out what's really going on. In the dim red light of your spare room, you hang the images one by one. In each, some purple vaporous mass floats in the room. That was weird enough, until you start developing pictures you never took, rooms you've never been in. The purple mass lurks in each one. You stare intently at the next picture, not sure of what you're seeing. It's a girl, hunched in the corner of the room, her face contorted in what must have been a deafening scream. The purple vapor surrounds her. The next few pictures are all similar. Someone screaming, being overtaken by the strange purple... Is it a substance or a creature? The final picture makes no sense because it's taken from inside the dark room and you're in it. The picture overlooks your shoulder and captures the door and a purple fog seeping underneath it. I can't escape my old car. I used to drive this beat-up Toyota Corolla, a blue 1998, named her Scully after the X-Files character. She was a trooper, got me through 2 breakups and a college dropout. Don't get me wrong, I spent a good chunk of change on repairs. I went to college in Indiana, so the shitty roads and bitter winters were not kind to Scully. But I put up the money over and over again until a month or 2 after I left school. I had a job interview for an office position. I had only just gotten my place and had nearly emptied my savings on rent. I needed this job. When I turned the key, my heart sank. She sputtered and hitched but wouldn't start. I gave her 3 more tries before I let out a guttural yell of rage. I got out of the car and kicked a massive dent into the door. I didn't have time for a tow or to ask a friend for a lift. Instead, I took a $24 Uber that I couldn't afford to the interview. I ended up getting the job, but still wouldn't have any money for a few weeks or so. When I got home and looked at my old beaten-up Toyota, the burning rage started to glow again. I took some pictures and put her up on Craigslist. A few people dropped in to check it out, but no one was very enthusiastic. I'm sure the dent I kicked in the side didn't help. What also didn't help was that the car didn't work. I ended up resigning to just call a junkyard and see what they'd give me. I was delighted to find they were offering $400 for junk cars. More than they used to, and definitely enough to get me through the week if I just ate ramen. They were there within the hour. As they pulled Scully away, I was kind of sad to see her go. We'd had some really fond memories, and I felt bad that our last one was me kicking a crater in her door. Still, the $400 made it hurt less. After the first few checks cleared from my new job, I was actually doing really well. I had more money than I really knew what to do with. I started casing local dealers for a used car. I've been stuck taking the bus at this point. I started to think I was going crazy because at every single dealership, tucked away in the back or on the side of the road or in the garage, was a blue 1998 Toyota Corolla, just like Scully. At the 3rd dealership, I had to ask, "Hey, how long have you had this car in?" "Ugh, too long, man. She runs like a dream, though, only 150K on her. You know, I'm trying to clear some space anyways. I could let her go for 400. I feel crazy saying it, but I can't seem to get rid of her." Stifling my shock, I declined and hopped on a bus home. From then, I started seeing her everywhere. At my work, parked near my house. I even took a trip out to New Hampshire to visit my mom and saw Scully parked outside a Starbucks. The worst of it was on my way home from work one day. I was on the crosswalk, heading to the bus, following the flow of pedestrians, when a blue blur flashed past. We heard a sharp thud and a yelp, and then it was gone. A lady began crying and screaming, "My dog! He killed my dog!" The dog was nowhere to be seen, probably still pressed against the grill of the car. A man began calling out and taking charge of the situation. "Somebody write this down. Blue Toyota Corolla. Old, probably 90s. Did anyone get a plate number?" After that, I stopped my search for a new car. I have a car. Scully. And I don't think she's ever gonna let me go. Don't play with strange cats. I work in high-rise steel, skyscrapers, stuff like that. Not an easy job, but the pay is good if you're qualified and not too skittish about heights. You see lots of crazy things up there. Most of the fellas I work with have stories. Mostly ghost stories. My friend swears he saw a UFO once. Everyone sees something. I was working with this guy, Fred. We were on maybe the 25th floor installing some reinforcing bars when he said, "Hey, look over here. Are you kidding me? Look, it's a cat." Lo and behold, this little black cat was scampering along the beams, way up there with us. We were still working on the skeleton, so it wasn't like the thing followed us up a flight of stairs. It had to jump across 25 floors of steel beams. "I'm gonna bring it back down." Fred was right to say this. The odds of that cat making it down safely had to be less than zero. Still, for some reason, I said, "If it can get up here on its own, it can get down. Better leave it." Maybe I was thinking of safety, maybe I was thinking of our tight schedule, but knowing what happened, I can't help but think some part of me knew that cat wasn't normal. "No way, man. This cat ain't dying on my watch." He brought the thing down and was back up in maybe 15 minutes. Hardly enough time to complain about. We must have scaled that building 100 times, but that day I held my breath until Fred got back. The next day, I was double-checking some of our rivets when I hear Fred laughing. "Check this out, man. He brought the whole family." This time, there were 4 black cats, nuzzling and climbing all over Fred. "Hey, man, be careful. Relax, it's just a couple of..." He never finished that sentence. One of the cats leapt from a nearby beam and pounced Fred directly in the chest. He went reeling backwards over the beam. We have harnesses and clips and locks and all sorts of things to make sure that if we ever lose our balance, we don't go plummeting to our death. Somehow, all of Fred's failed that day. I watched in shock as he slid over the edge, collided with the beam below him, and then flew 25 stories to the ground below. I didn't know Fred too well. He wasn't much for words, and we'd only known each other from the project. But still, watching anyone die never leaves you. There's a lot of protocol to go through when an accident like that happens. They're super rare, and companies can get into a lot of trouble if they don't handle it right. We weren't in the middle of nowhere, though. It was Times Square, so there was plenty of footage of the fall from the neighboring buildings. Through police statements and insurance testimonies, I got to see all of it. Out of maybe 7 different videotapes, not a single cat was caught on tape. That made me see a therapist, and she said the mind can fill in the blanks in weird ways when something traumatic happens, especially when somebody loses their life. But I don't think Fred lost his life. I think those cats took it. Maybe that's how they get their 9.